Dennis Hopper, a man of many talents, actor and photographer and art collector, died on Saturday of complications from prostate cancer. Dennis Hopper was 74 years old. His paranoid and manic characters helped define the 1960s counterculture. In 1969, he wrote and directed the seminal film Easy Rider, in which he also starred as a motorcycle riding hipster. Easy Rider cemented his status as a risk-taker and as a rebel. His on-screen eccentricities often mirrored conflicts in his own personal life. During the 1970s, his struggles with alcoholism and with addiction often threatened to derail his career. But his bad boy reputation masked tremendous craft and ambition. He became sober in the 1980s, and he turned into one of the most successful character actors in Hollywood. He played villains in David Lynch's Blue Velvet and in the 1993 blockbuster Speed. Hopper also excelled at several pursuits beyond the movies. As we noted, photography that he did was shown around the world and is collected in a book called 1712 North Crescent Heights. With a terrific eye for modern art, he amassed a multi-million-dollar collection by artists such as Andy Warhol and Julian Schnabel. He appeared on my program 3 times, and here's a look of some of those appearances. You and I share at least 2 things. One, I loved Easy Rider, and the other thing is that we both live part-time in North Carolina. You in Wilmington, and I have a little farm in Oxford.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that you were there.
Yeah.
That's terrific.
Now, how in the world did Dennis Hopper, actor, world traveler, end up in my home state?
Wow. But first of all, I didn't put that together till just now. Okay. Well, Wilmington, you know, is the largest producer of films in the United States, second only to Los Angeles. Yeah. They make more films in Wilmington than they do in New York.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
Because
they made over 80 movies in the last 4 years.
Yeah. And you went there to make a movie?
I went there I made 3 movies there.
Yeah.
My first movie I made there was Blue Velvet, David Lynch's movie. And then I made Super Mario Brothers. I was down there for 17 weeks. That's when I got in trouble and had a lot of time off and bought a building. I bought an old Masonic temple, 5 stories high. It was going to be torn down, and I bought it for $150,000.
And then spent $150 million.
Oh yeah, it's just, you know, I spent $1 million just getting the pigeons out and getting the roof fixed.
Now, is this the place that you're going to teach acting? You want to create, you have a great dream of
acting school there.
Yeah. Why do you want to do that?
Well, I've just, you know, Strasberg was a great teacher, and I feel that I just want to teach method, Strasbergian acting, sense memory, emotional memory, and it's a little payback time.
Did Dean turn you on to method acting?
Yeah, well, actually, you know, I saw we all saw Brando.
Right.
Dean saw Brando, I saw Brando, the world saw Brando.
Dean was in love with Brando in the sense of trying to copy him and living in his, but you?
Well, I mean, I was in love with Brando too. We all were. And then at 18, I was doing Giant I was doing Rebel Without a Cause and then Giant with Dean, and watching him work. And I realized I'd come out of a very stiff kind of formal background of playing Shakespeare. Sometime I was 13 to 18, I had played Shakespeare at the Old Globe Theater in San Diego. So when I saw Dean in Rebel Without a Cause, I mean, what he was doing was certainly not on the written page. I was doing great line readings, and I was doing, you know, had memorized my gestures. Everything I was doing was preconceived, even though it looked very natural. Dean was doing things, improvising things, and just creating things that had nothing to do with the written page. And I wanted to know what he was doing and how I could find out.
Did his death, I mean, were you close enough so that when he died in that car crash that it had an impact on you?
Oh yeah, well, we were in the middle. We hadn't finished Giant yet, you know, and I was still working on it. He finally, Steve, at the beginning of Giant, he took his money from Giant, $17,000, and bought a Porsche Spider. Yeah. But Stevens wouldn't let him drive it during the shooting. So we were 2 weeks before finishing shooting, and he had a race, and he wanted to be in, and Steven says, okay, you can go ahead and do it. So Jimmy went up to race in his new Porsche in this race, and he was killed on the way to the race in an accident. I mean, there have been all these things about suicide and intentions and so on. He just got hit by a guy who didn't stop at a stop sign. That's basically it. and he was been speeding 125 miles an hour before, but he was only going 70 miles an hour when the accident actually happened. So it was a tragedy, and we were all shooting. I mean, Elizabeth Taylor cried so much it took 2 weeks before we could even get a shot. Every time she came on the sound stage, she'd start crying and have to be medicated and taken off. So it was a tragedy to all of us. I mean, it was just an incredible, incredible tragedy. I mean, he's 24 years old, this young genius, and he was that.
He was a genius.
Oh yeah, he was amazing. In retrospect, he was the greatest actor I've ever seen work. Just amazing.
The greatest actor you've ever seen work.
Ever seen. I mean, when you think of Giant, here's a 24-year-old playing a 60-year-old man, going from a 17-year-old to a 65-year-old man in a movie. I mean, that's an incredible range, and so different a personality he was playing than what he actually was. No, he was amazing. So it was a great tragedy and a great loss to everyone.
Did you then decide to come to New York and try to understand what it was that he had gotten out of that New York training that made him as good as he was?
Yeah. I told him that I was going to go to New York and stay with Strasberg, and he said, "You shouldn't do that. And let me help you a little, but you don't need to go back there. He'll destroy you. You're too sensitive. He'll destroy you." So the second that he died, my teacher was gone, and I went back to study with Strasberg, and it was an incredible experience. But he used to say things to me like, "All you got to do is do things and not show them." And I'd say, "What does that mean? Do things and don't show them?" He said, "Well, you know, if you're drinking coffee, just, you know, don't act drinking coffee. Just drink coffee. You know. And if you're smoking a cigarette, don't act smoking the cigarette. Smoke the cigarette." And he said these things will be very difficult at first when you're on stage or when you're in a movie, because you'll be self-conscious about them. But once you get past that and you start doing things and living in the moment, so you're not presupposing what's going to happen when the door opens, you go answer the door, then you see the guy has a gun, and you know, go from there on a moment-to-moment reality basis. So that was fine, but then I went back and studied with Strasberg. So his untimely death
was a motivation for you to keep doing it. And you want to teach what you have learned, not just from Strasberg, but teach the method and somehow.
But I mean, teach Strasberg's method, which is different than Stella Adler's method and Sandy Meisner's method. They were the three people who went and actually met with Stanislavski. And
who was, what, a Russian or a Polish?
Russian. Yeah, he was Russian. Moscow Art Theater. And he wrote An Actor Prepares, this very thick book that gives, you know, that you can read and read and read and read, and tells you everything you don't want to know and do want to know about acting. But both Stella Adler and Sandy Meisner and Strasberg came back with three different points of view about what it was that to really create a real character and have a real inner life. And Meisner's thing was, you're like a child. Play like with your imagination, like kids playing in a lot. Bang, bang, you're dead. No, you missed me. Oh, I am. You shot me. I'm an Indian. I'm a cowboy. I want to be a cowboy. You know, have that kind of improvisation and that kind of belief, childlike belief, and that will bring you into having a real experience and having real emotions, which is certainly part of acting. But that was Meisner's basic approach. Stella Adler said it's all coming from the object. She was Brando's teacher. She said it's all coming from the object. By using the object, you will free yourself to, like, you know, be able to, your senses will work and you can have real emotions. If you notice, Brando very often is working with objects. He's constantly has an object of some kind that he's dealing with. And Strasberg said it's all your senses. Your smell, your taste, your seeing, your hearing, and your touch. Those are the things that will connect, and through doing sense memory, you can have a real emotional memory. And Stanislavski had said basically one thing. There was a game that he and his brother could never win at. And that game was standing in the corner for 5 minutes and not thinking of a white bear. Well, the second you get in the corner, you think, I'm here not to think of a white bear, and the game's over. You can't win at it. So that's what an actor, to have a real emotion on stage or in a movie, one must not think about what it is.
Would you rather, does Dennis Hopper act because he wants to make a bunch of money so he can go about becoming the great director he wants to be?
No.
He doesn't?
No. I act because I love acting.
Okay. All right. But do you love acting more than you love directing?
Well, that's
you can't say that's
no,
like
I can't really make it. I mean, they're really totally two different jobs. An actor is a. I asked Jack Nicholson.
Right.
I said, Jack, isn't acting a lot easier than directing? And he said, not really. And I said, well, you sure get a lot more time in the dressing room. And he said, yeah, but you're always wondering when they're going to call you out of the dressing room. So, you know, so it's just two different jobs. The director has the full responsibility of the show.
Yeah.
You know, he really does.
It's control and decisions.
And he's also there every second. I mean, it's a never-ending process, and it's usually a couple years or at least a year of his time. Whereas you come in as an actor, you're on the film the duration of the shooting of the film, not the pre-production and the post-production of the film, which a director is involved in. So it's a totally different world. But I love both. And it's much harder for me to get a job as a director than it is for me to get a job as an actor. I can work all the time
why
as an
is
actor.
that?
Well, it's...
Because now you have created this box office appeal, especially as a villain.
Yeah, yeah.
So
that's easier for me to get jobs as an actor. As a
because
director,
that's the way Hollywood is. It goes based on what it just saw.
And you know, you're as good as your last movie is
Exactly.
still appropriate. You know, unfortunately. So my last movie as a director was not a successful film.
And your last movie as an actor was brilliant.
A big success. Yeah.
Let me take you back again where we left off when we were talking about. So you go to New York and you study with Lee Strasberg, and then you go back to Hollywood. Take me from there to Easy Rider.
Wow.
1969.
Okay, I leave. Well, actually, you see, I get in a lot of trouble after Dean dies in Los Angeles.
Because?
Well, because Dean blocked his own scenes, and now suddenly I think that I got to block my own scenes. You know?
Yes.
And he didn't take direction. Like, he gave direction. I figure I got to do the same. So, like, you know, I'm in a lot of trouble because I am not a star. I'm not in any position to tell people who are like old school moms who are telling you every line reading and every gesture suddenly that I'm not doing it that way.
You're talking about movies you made after Giant?
After Giant.
Yeah,
right.
no, because you weren't trying to tell George Stevens
how to
block a scene.
No.
Okay.
No, but yeah. Well, even then I was fudging a little bit, you know. But anyway, I got into this, and I got in so much trouble I couldn't even work. Yeah. So I came to New York, not able to work in the industry in Los Angeles anymore. I was really only able to work in television, so and on the stage. So I came here to study. And then after I studied here, I went back to Los Angeles, and actually John Wayne and Henry Hathaway, who I'd gotten in trouble with Hathaway before, rehired me because I'd married Brooke.
Right, Brooke Hayward.
Brooke Hayward,
right.
And we'd had a daughter. And Henry Hathaway said, you know, we think, Duke and I, John Wayne, think that you should start working now because you married a nice Irish woman's daughter, you know, Margaret Sullivan's daughter, and you have a daughter of your own, and we think we ought to put you back to work. So I went back to work on The Sons of Katie Elder after 8 years of being out of the picture, so
And you behaved yourself?
I did what he said. I did the line readings, and I did the gestures, and I did what he told me, which I'd refused to do 8 years before. And I said, you see, I'm a much better... He came up crying with a cigar in his mouth. I said, oh, kid, that was great, that was great. And I said, you see, Henry, I'm a much better actor now than I was 8 years ago. And he said, you're not a better actor, kid. You're just smarter. You're just smarter. You know, so that was the way I went back into it. And then finally, Peter Fonda and I got together and decided that we were working on these cheap motorcycle movies at AIP.
Yeah.
Jack Nicholson was there too, doing Hell's Angels
on
Wheels.
What's his name? Who was it? Was it Foreman? Who was
Roger
it?
Corman.
Roger Corman
was doing a Wild. He did the Wild Angels with Peter Fonda. I did one called The Glory Stompers, and Jack Nicholson did one called Hell's Angels on Wheels. Yeah. And we were doing these motorcycle movies for drive-in theaters. Yeah. And so Peter and I decided that he knew I wanted to direct, he wanted to produce, and the one thing we swore we'd never do a motorcycle movie. So of course we end up doing Easy Rider. But that was in the change of my life.
Now, did Brooke introduce you to Peter, or was that?
I met Peter and Jane at Brooke and my wedding. Yeah. Which well, Leland and Pamela.
Pamela Harriman and Leland, right?
Yes, right. Yes.
Became
who's now she's
ambassador
ambassador
to Paris.
they came to the wedding but refused to give us a wedding reception, and so there were only Mankiewicz. There were like about 6 of us at the wedding, and Jane and Peter were there, and so they were very embarrassed because Leland and Pamela just left us there, and so Jane said, well, why don't we have a little something at my house? And so she had an apartment in New York, so we went to her place, and that's where Peter and I became friends.
Have you written a book putting all this together?
No.
I mean, every publisher must want you to do this. I mean,
they've
your
offered
story.
me a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, but you're going to do it later, but...
Well, I don't want to. I'm not ready to do it yet.
Okay. Did you have any notion that Easy Rider would be what it became?
Well, I mean, directing, writing, and acting in your first movie, okay?
Yeah.
You think it's going to be the greatest thing in the world,
Yeah.
and you're going to win I thought I was going to win the Cannes Film Festival,
Right.
and it was going to break all the banks.
Right. And you're going to change Hollywood.
Change Hollywood and do all those things. And strangely enough, everything but winning the first top prize at Cannes, I won Best New Director at Cannes. Lindsay Anderson won for If. He won the grand prize. But everything else, it did change people's minds about films in Hollywood. Independent films started to be able to be made, and it made a lot of money. And it was a wonderful, wonderful experience.
Why didn't you then go direct another great movie?
Well, I did, but I made the film that I'd written before Peter and I had gotten together with Stuart Stern, who wrote Rebel Without a Cause and The Ugly American, called The Last Movie. And I went down to Peru and shot it down there for Universal Pictures, and then brought it back and won the Venice Film Festival. And then they didn't understand it, and they didn't like it. And they said unless I re-edited it, they weren't going to distribute it, really. So I said, well, I'm not re-editing it. And they did what they said. They released it for 2 weeks in New York, 2 weeks in Los Angeles, 3 days in San Francisco. That would be the end of their commitment. And I said, this is impossible. They're not going to really do that. I went on national television, said this. They said they were going to do this. Of course, that's what they did. Another one of those stories. So that was sort of the end of my directing career for years. I mean, I didn't direct another movie for another 8 years. And I didn't really come back until I got sober. And I have now 12 years
How'd you get
of
sober?
sobriety. I bottomed out in the horrendous, like, I went off to make a movie called, they finally hired me to do something in Mexico called Jungle Fever, which I never shot one day on, but I was to play the head of the DEA in Mexico, and I decided that I was being set up and going to be obviously killed down there, because why in the hell would anybody give me the part of the head of the DEA, you know?
Yes, that's right.
So at that point, I went on one of
here.
my major benders and ended up stripping down naked and having hallucinations in the middle of the jungle in Mexico, and seeing snakes, and which I probably was seeing, for all I know, and walking down the Cuernavaca main highway naked, and being arrested and put in various jails until some stuntmen found me, and finally got me on an airplane back to Los Angeles to be hospitalized, whereupon I walked out on the wing of the airplane as it was taking off in Mexico City, thinking I was being filmed by Francis Ford Coppola and Wim Wenders, who I'd seen on the airplane, which were not on the airplane, hello. But I was in bad shape. So.
But how'd you come out of it? I mean, you
I was
hospitalization
Then I was hospitalized when I got back to the States, and I was 3-4 months.
Clearly what you are is a survivor, and two, as someone once said to me, they can never take your talent away from you.
Being such a stupid guy and such a drug addict and alcoholic, I obviously, it took a little more than a big club to drop me down and make me humble me enough to realize that I could never do those things again. And I have no desire. My life is so wonderful. I'm having such a good time. And
I want to get to there, but let me stay with you one thing.
Okay.
Blue Velvet. David Lynch is making the film. The story goes, you pick up the phone and you call him up.
Yeah.
And you say, I'm Frank.
yeah.
And it's not so much that I am Frank, but I've been there where Frank's been, and I've seen all of the Franks in the world.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And he said, what?
He said, gee, that's one, we'd never met,
Yeah, right.
and he's already shooting. So he goes back to the table. He was in Wilmington, North
Right.
Carolina. Goes back and he's having lunch with Isabella and Kyle MacLachlan, Isabella
Right.
Rossellini and Kyle MacLachlan and Laura Dern. He said, I just got off the phone with Dennis Hopper. And he told me, you did the right thing, David, by casting me as Frank, because I am Frank. He said, that's great news, isn't it, for the part? But how are we going to have lunch with him? Yeah, which is very funny. I mean, it's and a true story. How are we going to have lunch with him?
What are we going to do?
Yeah, what are we going to do?
Good for the film.
Frank's coming.
No, we can't.
Oh, boy.
Where was the thing about what you did with the gas? What was this?
Oh, well.
They told you to act like it was.
No, he had helium.
Oh.
You know, which
To give
makes
you
you
that
which makes you sound like
sound like-
Donald
right,
Duck.
right,
You know, it doesn't
right.
do anything. It doesn't disorient your.
Just makes
you
your
know,
voice.
Yeah, it makes you talk like this. So he had it on the set, and I was trying to use it, and I just, you know, and I would go and I'd sound like Donald Duck, and I said, you know, David, when I read this, I thought that this gas would be sort of more like an amyl nitrate or a nitric oxide or something, you know. And he said, what's that? Because he's really a Boy Scout, David
Yeah,
Lynch.
right,
He really
right.
is. He used to say, now this word here, when you say that word, okay, that word being the F word,
Right.
you know, when you say that word, well, he wrote the script. I mean, David, do you know what it says or not?
Right.
You know, but so anyway, and he would say things when you did a take right, he'd go, peachy keen, solid gold.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean,
Okey dokey.
Okie dokie, yeah, right. So anyway, I said, the Boy Scout leader said, what is that? And I said, well, let me look at me, and I'll do a sense memory here and show you what an amyl nitrate or nitric oxide would look like, which is going to disorient your mind for about a minute or two, and like, you know, and so and give you this rush and so on. So he looked at that and said, oh, that's wonderful, wonderful, do that. And I said, then if you want to dub the voice in later, we can put that word voice in, but right now I'm just thinking about the voice and I can't act through it. He said, no, go ahead and do what you were doing. So I thought that was a great contribution to this film, which he had written and was directing, until I thought one day, I got alone just about a year ago, much later, I got alone and I thought, you know something, if I would have played this part the way David Lynch had originally intended it, by just having my voice go, baby wants to,
It would have been all over.
you know, I thought, wow, weird guy. This Frank Booth would have been even weirder than I thought, you know? So I don't know, you know. It's
But
funny.
it turned everything around for you, didn't it?
Oh, yeah. That
Yeah.
and then I did Hoosiers. I went from North
Yeah, Hoosiers,
Carolina to
yeah.
Indianapolis.
Yeah. You and Gene Hackman.
Did Hoosiers right back to back. Never even came back to Los Angeles. Did them back to back. Changed costumes, and I was playing the shooter in Hoosiers, and I got nominated for that. And then I did a thing called River's Edge when I got back to L.A. All of three of them back to back, and they were such different performances. And suddenly I was back on track, and I got a nomination for Hoosiers. And
what was the
Blue
next big step? I mean, all of a sudden now there have been a
Velvet.
series.
Oh, Sean Penn. Sean Penn coming to me with Colors to direct, which I came into Orion and told them that anybody who makes, I came into Orion and I said, anybody who makes
Orion
this
Pictures,
movie, Orion, I said, anybody who makes this movie is a fool. This isn't even, this is a bad television show. Nobody wants to make this as a movie.
Yeah.
But at that time it was the gangs in Chicago selling cough syrup, and these cops come in and make this big super cough syrup bust before this cough syrup is spread all across the United States. And I went, what are you talking about here, you know? And so that was Colors. And they said, well, how could you make it better? And I said, make it about Los Angeles, make it about real gangs, you know, deal with the stuff, real drugs and the stuff that's really going on. And they said, are there gangs in Los Angeles? I swear
These guys in Orion?
in Los Angeles, okay? Are there gangs in Los Angeles? I said, yeah, they're in my alley, as a matter of fact, guys. If you just look out the window. Yeah.
I mean, when you look at this wonderful sort of both the highs and the lows and all that you have said here for the last almost an hour telling me about, I mean, what's the story of Dennis Hopper's life? I mean, what is it that when you sit here today, it's the best of times for you?
Yeah,
yes?
it is. But you know, I tell you very honestly, Charlie, I don't feel I've done it yet. I don't feel that I've really ever done the great part. I don't feel I've really ever directed the great movie.
Yeah.
And I just feel that I'm getting myself into a position where I may have the opportunity. I know this sounds, I know.
No, go ahead. It doesn't,
but that's the way
it
I
doesn't.
feel about it. And that's really honestly the way I feel about it. I don't feel that I've done it yet. I don't feel I've ever really had the great role. And I don't feel I've ever really been in the great movie, I mean, I look at Anthony Hopkins now, and I look at Remains of the Day, and I go, oh, where is that part? You know, where's a movie like this that I could do? You know, why am I never ever even see these kind of scripts, or they ever even come close to me? You know, but Anthony Hopkins is doing part after part after part. I'm very envious. And, help. Harvey Keitel.
Yeah.
Harvey Keitel is doing wonderful work. You know, I'm not saying that I'm not doing wonderful work, and I'm not saying I mean, I think Speed is terrific, you know, and I love it. And Jan de Bont did a sensational job directing this movie, and it set a new kind of genre for action films. But there's no backstory to my character. There's no backstory to any of the characters in that movie. It's not like in Line of Fire, where you know more about Malkovich's character than my character. You know, my character's just there to push the action on, and it's wonderful, and I love the movie, and I love to see it, and I love to watch this movie over and over and over. It's so exciting. But the great role I don't feel I've really ever had, and the kind of films that I want to direct, studios say, oh, they're too dark, or they're too this, or I don't think they're commercial, or blah, blah. So I feel that I'm still at a place where, you know, I look at Woody Allen. And the real filmmaker to me is a filmmaker who writes his own things. He's the author of his own. He's the auteur, as we call auteur filmmaker. He writes his stuff and does it. And I did that with Easy Rider and with the last movie. But after that, I was like not allowed to really do any of the projects that I wrote, and I could never get financing for them. So I feel a little uneasy about that. I feel like I'm just not really, I haven't really finished the work. So.
Yeah, but you feel ready to do it.
Oh, yeah, ready to do it.
I mean, you're 58, I think, 136. You're 58 years old. You feel like that the muscles are strong and the brain and everything is ready to do it. Do you think you'll get it? Do you think you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I got to think that.
Yeah,
you know,
that's right. It wouldn't be worth it hanging around. I mean, you could just act, but you are so motivated to be.
Yeah, I want to do it. And like, you know, it's funny because I'm at a place now where the success of something means something important to me. So that's another. You know, it's not the. It's a very. Listen, if my life went on the way it is right now, I couldn't complain.
Yeah, exactly.
But I just feel, and that's a good thing to feel, that you still got to do it. I still got to prove it.
I'm thinking about your dream and your passion and what you want to do. It's not like you have the project that you want to do. I mean, you're looking for, either as an actor or as a director, the great role as an actor. Somebody's got to bring that to you. You probably are going to have to create it yourself. Probably. Maybe, maybe not. Do you have it in hand? Is it there? Is it in any form that you could communicate it to what you most want to do? I mean, is it a film that's in your head? Is there a script in your desk? Is there...
No, but there's a lot of things. I could put it on a simple level, so that, you know, there's a lot of things that have happened in my life at various times that I feel have not come up on the big screen, you know?
I enjoyed this enormously. It's been an hour, and it's been a great conversation for me, and I'll see you in Wilmington at Landfall.
Oh, I hope that's true.
Look at this, folks. This is Elle magazine. This is Elle Summer.
Yeah, this is going to be
Fashion exclusive, it says on the cover. Dennis Hopper shoots Nadja Auermann.
Yeah.
Nadja Auermann is?
She's a German model.
Okay.
Yeah.
And guess who Dennis Hopper shot this for, America? Guess who is the fashion editor?
Director.
Director of Elle magazine.
My daughter, Marin. Brooke Hayward and my Brooke.
Your daughter?
Peter Duchin and Brooke,
Right. And this is...
This is Elle magazine,
She's a
and
she
hired
hires
me
you to go to Mexico.
To go to Mexico to shoot this.
Now, what's interesting about this, these are pretty good photographs.
Yeah, I think so.
You think so?
Yeah, I think they're hot. By the way, this is the May issue. We're not, I mean, my daughter just handed me this, so this is a little early to be seeing this, but go ahead.
Well, it's too late now, Dennis.
It's too late now. Go for it. It's a good issue, man.
Look at this. I mean,
yeah, they're pretty.
I don't know much about, I mean, but this is terrific stuff. I like the way, you know, I like the colors.
Page.
I like the way it's, you know, framed.
Let me see the next page there.
Oh, we like the next page. There you go.
That's pretty nice. The ones with all the Indians there, yeah. And then there's one more on the other next page.
Yeah. Now, did you have any help here? Somebody helping you with the lighting and with all that stuff?
Yeah, look at that. Isn't that great? Viva. I love that. That was natural light right there.
Yeah.
But this is all on the street. But I had assistants, yeah, I had all those people. It was great.
Now, do you want to do this again? Did this whet your
Oh,
appetite?
yeah, this is incredible. I love this. I'm going to do it again, yeah.
Are you writing anything? I mean, Beatty's right. You know, he called you up after your interview with me, and he said what?
He said, you know, you are, because I said on the show, you know, I'm not really ready to be honest enough to write my biography, blah, 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 blah. And he called me up and he said, you know, you are ready to write your autobiography.
You see, that makes Beatty interesting to me, not because he watches this program, but because he cares enough about a friend to say, to invest a phone call into saying, you are right, you ought to do this, you ought to, it's time. And you know what would be the perfect show? And you're charged with doing this.
Oh, boy, yes.
You,
Jack
Nicholson,
and Nick
and Warren.
And Warren. I know, it'd be great.
Why can't we do that?
Because they're TV shy. They don't, if you notice, they don't go out and plug things on television. Jack's never done it. Can you imagine the career Jack Nicholson has had, and he has never gone out on television and plugged anything?
Well, just stay with me for a second. When I said you got to be happy with where you are, you probably would have preferred to have done and handled it and arrived at the point Nicholson is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Or Warren, either one of them. Because, you know why? Because they're really basically in positions to do whatever they want. And that's a position I was only in for a second.
But you're getting there more and more.
Well, I'm getting
You're
there.
building
Yeah,
yourself
I'm
to be
getting there.
I also spent some time with Dennis Hopper for a 60 Minutes 2 profile. Here is an excerpt from those conversations.
How bad was the alcohol and all this stuff?
Oh, the alcohol was awful. I was a terrible alcoholic. I mean, people used to ask how much drugs I did. And I said, I only do drugs so I can drink more, ha, ha, ha. I was doing the coke so I could drink more. I mean, I don't know any other reason. I would drink. I'd start drinking in the morning. I'd drink all day long.
By 1969, it was the perfect time for a Hopper comeback.
We'd gone through the 60s and we'd never heard any rock music in movies. We'd never seen hippies, really. We'd never seen anybody smoke marijuana without going out and killing a bunch of nurses. We'd gone through the whole 60s and Hollywood hadn't addressed it at all. Through the whole 60s. You know, it just takes somebody who wants to show the time that
Somebody
he lives
knows what's going on in the world around them.
Yeah, and so that's what I wanted to show in film, which it's what I tried to do.
Did you blow it after Easy Rider?
Yeah, I probably did. I'm going to now make the movie that I wanted to make as my first movie, which is called The Last Movie.
Aptly titled, The Last Movie was Hopper's artsy avant-garde take on both the American Western and the movie industry. Its few previews were so poorly received that Universal Studios refused to release the film. The biggest mistake of your life was making the last movie.
Making the last movie and moving to Taos, New Mexico.
And getting out of the mainstream.
And not being here to protect myself or defend myself against anybody who wanted to say whatever they wanted to say. I couldn't get financing. I couldn't get in an office. I couldn't get in to see anybody.
No, would they take your phone call?
They wouldn't take anything, man.
His marriage to socialite Brooke Hayward collapsed. Hopper then married singer Michelle Phillips of the Mamas and Papas. That union lasted 8 days. Hopper said the first 7 were pretty good. Phillips suggested Hopper consider suicide. Finally, he was captured running naked and hysterical in a South American jungle. He was briefly institutionalized.
So I call a girlfriend from Taos, New Mexico to come pick me up, and I tell her that when I get back to Taos, I'm going to kill myself because I obviously can't act anymore. I can't make a sentence. I can't speak. I can't make a gesture. I can't do anything. So she freaks out and gets me on a plane and gets me back to Los Angeles to see my doctor. And that was the beginning of my sobriety.
You assessed this career
as a failure. Yeah. I mean, I think it's, I would, yeah. I mean, there are moments that I've had some real brilliance, you know, but I think they're moments. And sometimes in a career, moments are enough. But I never felt I've played the great part. I never felt that I've directed the great movie. And I can't say that's anybody's fault but my own.
Dennis Hopper, dead at age 74.